All right. Look at that. This huge audience, guys, is here to cheer us on.
Just
this was filmed in front of a live studio audience?
That's right.
That was the biggest lie ever in the 80s and 90s. It was all just clap tracks the entire time. Seriously. Except for maybe Seinfeld. That seemed like
I got a
I don't know.
There was a podcast a few years ago I listened to. I can't even remember which. Maybe it was actually one of the big ones. But it was about how they would record these laugh tracks and such for the use in the 80s. And there were a couple of people that were like laugh track celebrities they would get on every show because these guys, a couple of guys that had these really distinctive laughs, and they would have recordings with them just laughing at things,
it's
just
like
so that they can get their unique.
What's that?
Laugh
what's
tracks.
that scream that in all in the movies? What's it called?
Wilhelm scream.
Wilhelm scream, right?
Yep, the Wilhelm scream.
Yeah.
Well, in the ancient world, they would hire professional mourners.
Yep.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Well,
yes, my daughter is appearing in her high school play, and Greek tragedy, and she had to learn to wail.
Exciting!
In one scene, she played the part of a mourner.
Well, she watched The Rings of Power, so she was well versed in what that felt like.
She couldn't make it. Hey. That's right. the way. Well, the thing about Rings of Power is you could walk away, and
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, okay. Before we dive into like the 80s and 90s laugh track like histories here, first of all, I'm here with Austin Freeman, author of Tolkien Dogmatics, who's been on before. Is it twice? 3 times now? I don't remember.
Twice here and once
on the podcast. Awesome. So go check out his book, Tolkien Dogmatics. If you look it up, you find it on Amazon, or you can go to lexhampress.com, LEXHAMPRESS.com to get the book. I highly recommend it. I think it's one of the best books released in the last couple of decades that I've read on Tolkien.
I highly recommend it as well.
Yeah.
Completely objective.
And then Michael Blow, co-host of Exploring Tolkien.
Who's been on more times than anyone wants. So that's...
Yeah. He said there are more minutes of Michael speaking than anything else in Exploring Tolkien in the last.
Wait, you weren't here last time, though, Michael.
Wait, what?
Oh, that's true. Who
said that? Who said that?
You weren't on here last time. You weren't here last time. We had our live stream. It wasn't. You weren't here, Michael. That's all.
Was that a claim someone made, or did you actually?
No, I'm just totally making this up right now.
Oh, right.
I don't.
83% of all statistics are invented.
That's right. All right. So we're here to discuss all things Tolkien. Sadly, a few of our other regulars couldn't make it. Friday night seems to be a tough time. We'll see if we continue on the Friday nights. I'm always open to new suggestions and new times and how it ends up working out. But
what do people have to do that's more fun than this?
Right.
I'm
just waiting for Austin to disappear into the background.
Let's see. I think John Trent said it's his daughter's first birthday. Whatever. Let's see. Middle Earth Mixer said he's going somewhere with his wife who's like way pregnant and they're trying to get time together before they have kids. Whatever. Who else are we missing? John Carswell's family stuff. Yeah. So anyway, they have all more important family than we do, apparently.
And yet I have more kids than all 3 of them put together, and I'm here. So just saying.
Right. We're all for quality, not quantity. Anyway. Oh, man. I'm going to dig myself. Sorry, guys. I know you're probably going to listen to this, so I apologize already. We miss you. All y'all.
Totally miss you.
Who did I miss? Is that everybody? Oh, and Garrett. Garrett's working tonight, so we can't get him over either. Anyway, hey, so we're going to talk about a bunch of things. We're going to talk about how the best line, how they didn't think this one through, how the Embracer Group is going to exploit the Lord of the Rings. Literally the word they used in a conference call, exploit the Lord of the Rings. We'll talk a little bit about the war. Man, I can't say these 4 words together in any sort of like linguistically acceptable way. War of the Rohirrim. It comes out as like War of the Rohirrim every time I say it.
It is
War of the Rohirrim. And that I don't know that the changes so much. I'm like, it'll be an interesting conversation because I have some thoughts about that. And then Return to Moria, and then Warner Brothers met with Peter Jackson, and Return to Moria, a great new game. And then, of course, just some thoughts about the Rings of Power. That's always coming up. So you're still not muted, Michael, but we can't see you, just so you know. We heard something in the background. Did you fall off your chair?
I was ducking.
Oh, okay. So anyway, we're going to talk about all that. If you want to join us in this in our Discord chat, you can become a member at thewondering.com/member, and you get our extended podcast, which is about 20 or 30 minutes longer every week. We got our members only Discord chat. We've got Hey guys, we've got, I don't know, should I wear the hat? Should I put it on? Should we give it for our live streamers? I don't know. Oh man. Okay, so we're putting up a shop. It's going to be on our podcast this week. I'll put it on, everybody, for the 15 of you watching on
because
Friday night.
we hate sarcasm and irony. We decided that our very first product was going to be.
Okay. So
zoom in a little more.
There you go. Hold on. We'll solo it right here.
Yep.
All right. So you can see that after the Rings of Power, and probably particularly, well, sorry about the microphone there, probably particularly for after playing the Gollum game, this hat is really particularly unnecessary. Just my gosh, that was so bad. I mean, nobody liked it because of Tolkien, or because it treated Tolkien poorly. It was just a really poorly made game. So anyway, if you want to get this hat, wow, I guess I could actually like log into Teespring and make this one live right now. But if you listen to the podcast on Tuesday, actually, you'll hear how to get this, and we'll have a bunch of other stuff on the shop too. And there'll be a code, and if to get a couple bucks off the hat, and a couple bucks off anything on the store, and then if you want $4 off, you can become a member. We'll give a code just to our members.
And if you would like the world's most useless version of this hat, which is the one that is being designed in Tangwar script, then put a comment in the YouTube channel, and if we get enough comments, we'll make that version too.
Yeah.
Also need to do a Futhark version.
What's a Futhark?
The runes.
That's called Futhark? It's not. Wait, the runes, like which runes? Just the dwarven runes? They were called Futhark? How do you spell that? I didn't know that. Learn something new every day.
Check myself. Oh, that's the actual.
I thought it was the Kirth. Kirth?
Yes, you're right. Futhark are the actual runes that they're based off of.
Oh, the real history.
Real ones.
Okay.
Come on, Austin. We're here to talk about fake history, not real history.
So anyway,
fake news.
Yeah, go to theonering.com/member. Join us there. It's a lot of fun. Naya, I see Naya in our chat, and I see Gwahir in our chat, so they're already here chatting things up. All right, I don't know. I'm not a hat wearer generally either. Like I only do it like if I'm outside and I need the shade, or I'm in the yard and I'm sweating or whatever. So I might have to just take this off at some point. Because you know how many people are going to probably comment on this and be like, "Can't believe the hat he's wearing."
It'd be like, and we're canceled.
Yeah, just the hat, just the hat. Doc Nabbit. Oh, and of course, if you want to super chat, we always appreciate that a lot to support us as we keep trying new things and expanding our reach and paying for like the $400 a year for podcast hosting. That's always fun. All right, so guys, let's start with this here. With the Embracer Group. Now, remember the Embracer Group. They bought Middle-earth Enterprises last year. I think it was August of last year, I want to say. And that gave them licenses to games, to movies, to, not TV, I don't think. It was games and movies and those surrounding kind of things, toys and all that stuff. And so they have the Lord of the Rings now. They can make games around the Lord of the Rings. And in their open letter to the company's 17,000 staff, when they were talking about like how they're cutting, I don't remember how much it is they're cutting. They're cutting a ton of people too. But they said, essentially, we know we need to be exploiting Lord of the Rings in a very significant fashion. We already knew this was happening, and essentially from the large corporations, and turned that into one of the biggest gaming franchises in the world.
This is what I appreciate about COOs, who was the guy that actually said it, is they don't have a lot of finesse. They just tell you the reality. Like, this is the business reality. Look, we need to exploit this. And by the way, half of you are fired, but we need to exploit this.
We spent $400 million buying Middle-earth Enterprises, and all of you people who are fired, it would have cost us like $3 million, but you're getting fired anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's corporations at their best.
So exploiting Lord of the Rings.
But isn't this...
Sounds like what Rings of Power has been doing anyway, so yeah. I don't know.
So this is a deal that they signed with Amazon?
No, this is a deal they bought Middle-earth Enterprises, which was formerly Tolkien Enterprises, which is what came out of Tolkien selling his rights in 1969 to United Artists, and they created an entity to manage all of these licenses. And it's been its own thing mostly for the last 50 years until Embracer Group brought it. Embracer Group is this umbrella company that owns a ton of like gaming companies and other things, right? They have a lot of different IPs that they control, and companies that they have. And so now that they have, right, they own whoever made Tomb Raider, they own a couple other ones, that studio.
Naughty Dog.
Naughty Dog, Square Enix, or whatever. I don't remember. So anyway, yeah, so they own these here. And so now they're like, okay, Lord of the Rings stuff. How many of these game companies that they own are going to be creating Lord of the Rings things, right? Lord of the Rings things. Or as Daedalus Entertainment would say, Lord of Ring.
Yes. Lord of Ring. But it's being put out with Amazon Games, though, is it not?
So that's a different thing. Amazon Games has an MMO that they also have, which they did license with these guys already. So that's separate from like them saying we need to lean into this here. But to me,
it's separate in one sense, but it's going to be part of the corporate strategy. So the MMO that they're making for Amazon Games is going to be part of this huge push that the COO is talking about. They're basically going to, lean into or exploit Lord of the Rings as much as they can. I mean, look, on a very, very practical level, aside from the dignity of the way that he said it, is it not true that this is probably the most profitable IP they own? So yeah. I mean, if you're an operating officer, you're gonna try to do that.
Yeah.
The hilarious part is he's just saying it out loud and along with the job cuts. That's what's the funny part to me.
But it speaks to what, like we've talked about a few times now, is that when you have the corporation deciding what games they're going to make, and there's not a person with passion behind it,
right?
It's still going to just suck.
Right. So that's the real question: is if you were to ask this guy and his ilk at Embracer, why do you think that you can exploit this game so much? In other words, wherein lies the value of this game? Is it in all the fans? Okay, so you have a valuable IP because you have so many fans across the world. What do the fans like about Lord of the Rings that you are going to turn into games that make them love it? Because explain that to me, please. Because I bet you if you had such a conversation for longer than 2 minutes with the showrunners on Rings of Power, you would have started to see the red flags immediately, or at least by the end when they're 6 months away from releasing. Mm-hmm. You would have seen the problem. So that's always the question in my mind: is do they understand why their IP is so valuable? Do they understand how it is that they can make a successful game? Because there's been a successful MMO. It looks old now, which is Lord of the Rings Online, but it ran a very successful path. One that in the gaming world was very similar to what Jackson did in the movies, which is they stuck to the books. In fact, they did a better job than Jackson ever did. And they have a world that's unbelievable. People love, most of their money probably monthly is coming in from nostalgia folks like myself I still pay the subscription fee every year because I want to have my, I like running around in that little world.
Doesn't Corey Olsen do like tours in it?
Yep, he does. And it's exploring Lord of the Rings. He every couple weeks, or a week or two, he ends his Exploring Lord of the Rings podcast where he's going through. To say he's going through the Lord of the Rings at a snail's pace would be an insult to snails. He's going through Lord of the Rings. He has this guy who hilariously, I think he's a German, but one of the listeners who's there every week. And he does this revised arc of how long it's going to take them to finish the 3 books on the podcast, according to all of the rate of progress. Yeah. And right now he's going to finish it somewhere in like 2042. So it's insane. It's insane. On average, he covers like 2 sentences a podcast, and then he finishes the podcast with half an hour in Lotro, and he explores parts of Lotro. And frankly, it's actually, for nerds, it's pretty fun. I don't listen to the all hour and a half beforehand. I listen to it on double speed and then stop every once in a while. But yeah.
Well,
so speaking of people that need to know what to do with the intellectual property and the Germans, I mean, I really think that Embracer needs to be getting in touch with the German government.
That's right. As a cautionary tale, maybe. That's right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I guess, does that mean that Daedalus has to contract with them to make the next movie? Did they?
Chancellor Merkel, what do you think should be the next game?
Oh gosh.
And
I don't even want to go there.
Yeah, I can just see YouTube.
Oh yeah, no,
Can you monetize?
It doesn't give me any hope. I mean, nobody wants. here's the thing. Like you even think like, okay, so I think of franchises because that's really what they're trying to do. They want to. Everybody wants to create their Madden, their Assassin's Creed. I don't know what else. Their Call of Duty and Battlefield and right.
Call of
Everything.
Duty is the biggest one, yeah.
Even Link and Mario, right? That's what they want because it's printing money. But that means that you have to. The first iteration has to be tremendously good. It has to create the base that's going to push itself into the second generation. And you know, Madden's a little different, but I would say Call of Duty and Assassin's Creed and all that sort of stuff. Like they really, they had people who were, you know, the people who wrote those games, who initially wanted those games. It was their vision to create those games, and it wasn't a corporate exercise. And I just, after seeing Gollum, and then of course, okay, so then let's take a look at the other game coming out, which is The Lord of the Rings Moria, or Return to Moria.
Yes, the survival game.
Yeah, so this is a survival crafting adventure set in the 4th Age of Middle-earth, and in practice it means it looks like a bit like Deep Rock Galactic with Lord of the Rings dwarves instead of space dwarves, where you get sent on missions and you have these tasks to accomplish and you can go grab things and get things, and I guess there's leveling up and all that sort of stuff. Never played the game. This one I have a little bit more hope for because at least it has a style to it that's you know, they're not trying to be something tremendous and great.
Yeah, I watched the trailer of it, the gameplay trailer. Oh, there it is. Yeah,
John Rhys Davies, right?
John Rhys Davies, yeah, he read that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's I mean, you're supposed to be following Gimli, so in the fourth age Gimli.
Is it really?
Yep. So fourth age Gimli leads the reclamation of the mines of Moria, and so you're supposed to be, you know, in there. It's interesting. They have a take on the reality of Moria at the time, which is basically the whole entire orc culture has gone through an apocalypse with the death of Sauron. So the orc culture has changed. Apparently, I don't know what the specifics are going to be, but it's post-apocalyptic orcish culture that you're up against. For whatever that means. But it's a survival game. It's got all the details where you have to, I mean, when you first go in, it's apparently dark, utterly dark. You have to, you know, get the crap, bring your light. You have to make more light.
Already sounds so much more interesting than Gollum, honestly. Like to actually have to do something rather than herd orc cows and grab red rocks and talk to the frail man.
See, this is what, like, it was only a government agency could have greenlit the money for the Gollum game, because it was so patently bad. Yeah,
it's at least it's got, you know, it's creating its own style rather than trying to, you know, recreate reality, which I think is a really good idea. Anyway, I'll give it a shot.
Have there been any other Lord of the Rings games that have set themselves in the 4th Age?
Oh, good question.
I thought of that, and I think the answer is no. I don't think that anyone's, which I always thought was interesting, because I always thought that was the most, as far as making yourself new, being newly creative in Tolkien's secondary world, that would hold the most promise, would be the 4th Age, instead of trying to rehash details of the previous ages. Yeah. But I don't think anyone's done it. It's a good question.
Trying to find that. I don't think so. No, because that's in the third. Okay, yeah, no. This is the one. Here's the one thing that looks a little funky to me. I don't know what is that supposed to be? A cave troll?
It's a troll. So obviously, it's a troll with the height and everything.
I really hope though that they don't bring in a Balrog, because, you know, who knows what lurks in the deeps. I'm like,
the nameless things.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and Lord of the Rings Online leaned into the nameless things, because, you know, from Gandalf's statement that there are other creatures down there that are nameless, and so, you know, there's room for creativity there.
Yeah, that's how I opened my chapter on Lovecraft and Tolkien in my theology and H.P. Lovecraft book.
Nice.
That's a very Lovecraftian passage from Tolkien there.
Yep.
Not bring a report to darken the light of day.
Nick Broom, who's we're going to interview in about a month, he appeared in front of the Tolkien Society last year and gave a talk, and at the end of his talk, he connected Lovecraft and Tolkien.
Interesting.
On different levels.
Well, they're exact contemporaries. That's something
exactly
we don't even register, because their thought worlds are so different. They're literally born 6 months apart. And Lovecraft dies like a year or two before Hobbit comes out.
Okay, so Lovecraft died younger.
Yeah.
Okay.
He never got to see the Hobbit published. So Tolkien had read some of Lovecraft stuff in just like the pulp magazines, but Lovecraft never had the opportunity to read Tolkien. Anyway,
So
Somehow
perhaps
I'm thinking the Hobbit wouldn't have been his bag.
yeah, it's interesting because he liked Dunsany, and Tolkien liked parts of Dunsany. Lovecraft said very explicitly in his formulations of like why he does horror literature that he's after a particular emotion of breaking free from the material world and from the chain of cause and effect. And that's exactly what Tolkien's looking for in Fairy as well. Lovecraft says the reason I do horror is just because that's the easiest way for me to create that effect of escape from the world. So I just wonder if he had lived 20, 30 years longer and had met Lord of the Rings, what would have happened?
Oh, that is a fascinating idea. Thank you for bringing that up, because we're about to do in our next series on the podcast, maybe on our next one, but very soon, we're going to do on fairy stories. And that would be an interesting one to explore. I might quibble with the breaking free of the connection of cause and effect to say the shift into a different, and the world of fairy has its own cause and effect, but it's not. So it's not just Lovecraftian cause. It is really a separation. Like the things that he describes are not just physically impossible, but they're kind of world breaking, which is kind of the point at a certain level for him. Tolkien's concern, I would say, is world crafting, not world breaking. And so while he has epic events that are on the level, cataclysmic of a sort, he does seem always very concerned with. This came up, but the whole different physics idea came up with Jonathan's perennial issue with Legos running on snow.
Goodness,
he can't let go of it, and
I can't let go of it. You guys can't let go of it. You and Dan, Michael,
we have it on
Kyle
record.
At the B. Ugh, you guys are all like, oh my, sorry. All I'm trying to do is this.
That's right.
That's all I'm trying to do, man.
Or hashtag. Get the Tolkien Society folks after you.
That's right.
Again, yeah.
Mtsuga.
Whoa, that's a win.
It's a
We're all right with that.
hard thing to say.
So do either of you guys?
Physics.
So Jonathan plays Gollum as his new favorite game. I play Lotro. Are you a gamer at all, Mr. Freeman?
I have not been for years and years and years because I've been too busy. But like right now, I finally got to the area of my life where I have some free time in the evenings. And so, yes, I have started again. In fact, I just I downloaded Star Wars, the remake of Star Wars Battlefront 2 very cheaply for May the 4th. And that's
Do you mean the one that came out like 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
The more recent.
So it still looks incredible, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it's amazing, and the sound that they created for that game was nuts.
But I have not played any Tolkien related games since like PlayStation 2 era. Oh no, that's not true. That's not true. I played the Lego games.
That's right. Those are the ones. This might be the closest.
Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I played all those.
Yeah. Play Red Dead Redemption 2.
That's a good one.
That's a really good one. I love the Old West too.
3 is the other one that I'm doing.
Well, if Embracer has their way, you won't be able to say that for long because they're going to flood the market with Tolkien games.
Oh gosh, yeah. How many we're going to get mobile games?
Well, that's just it.
Oculus Quest games.
Hey, I'm down for that.
If it's done well.
In my headset, when Amazon released a custom home, so I don't know if do you guys have VR headsets?
No,
I do not.
So I got one for Christmas. My wife surprised me a couple years ago. And you start out in what's called a custom home, which is just an environment where you can launch your menus and everything. And so Amazon released a Moria custom home with ambient sound and stuff, and the waterfalls coming down through the caves. Yeah. And I thought, for one thing, I thought Moria was one of the better elements in Rings of Power, like the set design there, because it really captured, this is a cool place that I would want to live in, right? Like I can see this culture working somehow. The opportunity to do stuff on Quest is intriguing to me. There's a studio called Dr. Beef. It's not really a studio. It's a group of volunteers, but they port games from the early 2000s into virtual reality.
Oh, nice.
For free. And so like you can go to Steam and download like Return to Castle Wolfenstein
Oh my gosh.
Die Outcast or Quake for like $1 and play it in full VR 3D. So if we could get, I don't know what, like early 2000s movie age Lord of the Rings properties we could get ported into VR. That would be,
Dude, this alone would make me want to get a VR headset. Jedi Knight Outcast, like Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Knight 2 was amazing.
so I got that one, definitely.
Duke Nukem Voxel Doom. That's interesting. Does it work pretty well with the controllers and everything?
Yeah, I mean, it is the game. Like, it's the actual game files. What they've done, they've just changed the camera mode.
So that you can actually see all around you the whole time.
Yeah.
Because rendering that is pretty darn easy these days.
And move the
lightsabers.
Like,
and
you can move your lightsaber and it actually moves around. It's not like you're just pressing a button. You're actually...
Man, look at this. Oh my gosh. Now I know what to ask for my birthday.
Yeah, so this is
rabbit hole engaged.
Any of our...
Man, I need to cancel the live stream so I have time at night on Fridays to...
Any of our listeners that are interested in VR, SideQuest is an essential website because this is where they do all of the beta testing, all of the smaller studio stuff out. I think since I bought my headset, I have actually purchased 2 things, maybe. All the rest of it is free.
Wow.
Or, like you could pay $80 for a new Xbox game. A lot of even like the AAA VR games, maybe 20 to 30.
Yeah, that's crazy. We can. I spent $70 for the Gollum game, so
Did you get a refund?
Oh man, that was a bad decision. Quake 2. Okay. Quake.
Has there ever been a company that apologized for their game outright after less than a week?
It happens a lot, actually.
It's the new standard.
It is. Like there's somebody put together like a montage of like 8 different game companies that do it because the investors demand it. They want the game out to make money, and then they realize, so you put out a crap game, we're not making money. So you should have waited another year before we actually lost all our investment.
Wow.
Happened with Battlefront 2, actually.
Yeah, that's right.
And so
it happened with the Cyberpunk 2077 that came out 2 years ago too.
Oh, I remember the Cyberpunk one.
Yeah. And that's the same studio that did The Witcher, right? Like CD Projekt Red is a really good studio.
Yeah, and The Witcher was amazing. And they're going back to The Witcher now because they're like, oh, okay.
Well, what happens is like Battlefront 2 now is a solid game because they have fixed it, right? You wait a couple more years, they've done all the patches, they took away all the pay-to-play stuff. It works fine, but it's lost its audience at that point.
I always, before buying a AAA game, I'll always wait at least 6 months, probably a year. 1, because you get it for like half off. And then 2, all the bugs are worked out.
All I have to say is Austin sure knows a lot for a guy that said he didn't play video games.
I do know a lot, but I'm also a professional researcher.
He also teaches at a college. And what else do they talk about there other than university? I mean,
it's true.
Well, our initial idea for the Hobbit and Theology course that I'm teaching now at Houston Christian was to do it in VR. Like we would meet in a virtual environment, and we would sit and lecture together.
And could you pick like you could be Gandalf, and the rest of them could be like a hobbit and an elf and an orc, and then if you didn't like somebody, you could be like, all right, like just chop off their arms, and they can't really do anything anymore.
Defenestrate them. Yep.
There's there's a ton of 3D assets that you could even bring in to use as class aids.
Yeah,
we experimented with that. Didn't have enough time before the launch, but it's possible.
That's kind of cool. I can see that.
That is very cool.
As long as you're not paying $3,500 for the new Apple Vision to get the creepy eyes and creepy like fake face. I've heard people talk about their because they right when you have a big mask on and you're in a conversation or group meeting with other people, like they can't see your face, and so they try and figure out what your face looks like because they've got a scan of it, and it's this. People are like, yeah, no, it's a super duper uncanny valley right now that just doesn't look at all like a real person, and
I just have no idea, given all of the billions of dollars that Meta is bleeding from virtual reality, why in the world Apple would release this now.
I think I think they had to, because they haven't done anything new in a long time, and they don't know what it's for yet. Kind of like the Apple Watch when it was released, it wasn't very good because it was like, look, you can draw pictures to send to people, or you can tap your heartbeat to other people. And we're like, what? We don't care. And eventually it's like, oh, it's all about fitness. It's all about timers. It's all about alarms and reminders, right? And weather. And that's pretty much it. I mean, you can get other things now. I can control your podcast and music and all that stuff from it, but otherwise, yeah. I'm not on board with a $3,500 computer on my head.
Was
lasts for 2 hours.
Well, what was the funniest to me about that, and to your question, was I remember the one piece of technology. We live in a technopoly that unquestioningly accepts anything that comes out. We don't ask the question, is it good? We ask, how can I use it, and absolutely push it out.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we had rejected in the last decade, to my memory, it was Google Glass. It came out and it was a failure, and it got banned in, like, restaurants started banning it, and so they backed away. Yeah. And so the fact that Apple would release this without any stage 2 that we know about, I mean, maybe they're geniuses and they have a stage 2, but I don't know.
No, I mean, it's the same thing. You say Google Glass, but the metaverse was another failure. Like, it's
for Facebook,
it's dead because, and this is the answer to why people want virtual reality. They want to use it for gaming and for immersive environments. They don't want to use it to sit in a committee meeting. They don't want to use it for business. Like, that's boring.
Yeah.
Right. They want the secondary world. They don't want it to be an extension of the primary.
Or like, they're like, you can like sit courtside at a basketball game if we set this up. I'm like, yeah, but if I'm watching a basketball game with my friends, I'm sitting here in a corner by myself while they're watching it on a TV, and I don't get to actually experience what they're experiencing in a corporate environment. It's a very singular thing. Anyway, we're getting far afield from this. Anyway, we're going to say, we'll close this out from the VR discussion. What?
I'm talking about Lord of the Rings video games in virtual reality.
Well, yeah, but which ones? Like, what are we going to do then?
I don't know.
Need to see. They need to hire you, Austin, to like actually be like, okay, look, here's a vision. Like, this is what we got to do. Not the 3 guys who were cast-offs from, I don't know, Blizzard, because they failed at what was the game that they canceled recently? Well, Overwatch 2 really didn't do well at all. But anyway, sorry, you were going to say.
But no, I was going to say that we touched on this subject. I mean, I agree with you about hiring Austin, because that's what they actually need to do. I mean, Austin aside, well, Austin's great, but this is the problem with the corporate vision versus the single vision. They need to find if they're actually going to leverage it, if they're actually going to exploit Lord of the Rings and do it in a way that people enjoy and want to come back to, they're going to have to find people with the vision and stop making it a corporate writing process and a corporate storyline process. They think because that's horrible.
They think that hiring, talking to a couple important Tolkien people is enough to make it worthwhile. And so here they'll say the team did extensive research. This is on the Wikipedia page for Return to Moria, the new game coming out this fall. Held team book clubs and consulted with Tolkien experts Corey Olsen, T.S. Louikart, tabletop role-playing game designer and poet, and David Sallow, who worked on the languages of J.R. Tolkien for the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit trilogies. So a linguist, I mean, Corey Olsen's the go-to because you search like Tolkien scholar. He's always the first one that comes up now because that's what he's known for these days. But you need that person running the entire game.
Yeah. The fact that you had a meeting with somebody means nothing. What the question is, who actually designed your final cause, the purpose for which you made the game. Yep. And if it's a committee of some sort, you're going to sink. Yeah, because 100%. You're going to stop looking up. You're just going to look down like a stone instead of up.
You know how that works.
Yeah. So it always comes back to that. All right. So speaking of committees,
this is a great segue. All right.
Well,
deliver now.
Speaking of whatever, and then you figure out how you're going to tie that into the thing that you're getting into.
Right.
But speaking of committees, so War of the Rohirrim, I can't figure out if it was a committee or not. Just because Philippa Boyens was involved, but she wasn't the writer on it. So I'm trying to figure out what her executive producing it is, just because they wanted the name and she was going to help with the writing a little bit. Right? Philippa Boyens was one of the screenwriters along with Fran Walsh and Peter Jackson for their Lord of the Rings films and The Hobbit. And so they came in and they wrote this story. of the War of the Rohirrim, based on Helm Hammerhand and his son Wolf and Freylof. I'm trying to remember all the characters. And the Freka. Is that how you say it? Correct me when my old English is wrong. And so they have the story now that they're creating. And so the story is, let me just kind of like, you guys read it, but I'm going to say it anyway. So the story is about Helm Hammerhand and how this fat guy, I think it was Freka, right? Does that sound right? Do you guys remember? Freca? No, you don't remember. I should bring it up here. In any case, this fat guy, he wants to marry his daughter, and he says,
he's the Dunlendine prince with partial Rohirric background claimed anyway.
Right. And anyway, so they go through this here, and there's a lot of death and there's a lot of destruction, and then the story is told through the eyes of his daughter, who he wanted to marry. His daughter's never named. She's mentioned once in the appendix A of Return of the King, and so they're naming her Hera, and here's
like all you could do was go to Greek mythology. I know. I understand it's got a little accent in the right place, so makes it different.
Hera is based on the historical figure Ethelfled. Is that right? I don't know. The daughter of Alpha the Great, who went on to become the lady of the Mercians, and defended her people from the invading Viking raiders. That's who they're basing it on. So I am not like. Here's the thing I think about this here is like you can't, because so many people die in this. You can't tell the story from the perspective of one of those people who gets offed in the films, and so you have to kind of. I like the idea of telling from the perspective of somebody who's watching it, and at least it's a character that Tolkien did write one pronoun about. She. It was a she. So were
those really her pronouns, Jonathan? Was she ever asked?
We'll find out in the films. But anyway, so they're making it from her perspective. I don't know if it's going to be so much like it's her story, so much as like she is the one experiencing what Tolkien wrote about. I don't know. What do you guys think of like how they're going to tell the story and where they're going with it?
So in this story, all of her relatives die, especially the male relatives. They die in various ways, being lost. Right. Her father dies in a pretty awesome way, and kind of like it belongs in the movie Predator or something. And so I have no problem with them telling the story from her point of view. They think that's fine. I think that's, like you say, Jonathan, you need a point of view, and it's kind of a dead end, literally, to have a point of view of the person that dies. So great. It's a tragic story. And because the Rohirrim are like in the Lord of the Rings, the Rohirrim are the alphas and the Dunlendines are the betas in that region amongst the races of men. Yeah. And the situation is reversed, or at least the Dunlendines have the upper hand in terms of power, and they make alliances with the Corsairs, and there's all kinds of intrigue. Anyway, the Rohirrim are on their back feet fighting, and it looks like they're going to lose at almost all times. No problem with the general premise. However, if they go and tell the story and it becomes clear that they are telling the story because it is a woman's perspective versus happening to be the daughter's perspective, or because the daughter is interesting or whatever, or she leads her people, which she probably had to in that case because all of her brothers and her father die in the story. Yeah. Then fine. Sorry, if they don't do it like that, then fine. But if it becomes a point of like, we're just checking the diversity, equity, and inclusion box by making it because isn't this girl power awesome, then I'm gonna have a problem.
Right. Yeah. Because as Naya said in our chat, she asked, but wait, what about Freyalaf? I mean, every time I look at that and like two accents in the name, that's rough. And Tolkien writes this in Appendix A. Soon after the winter broke, then Freyalaf, son of Hild, Helm's sister, came down out of Dunharrow, to which many had fled, and with a small company of desperate men, he surprised Wolf in Meadowseld and slew him and regained Edoras. There were great floods after the snow, and the Vale of Entwash became a vast fen. The eastern invaders perished or withdrew, and there came help at last from Gondor by the roads both east and west of the mountains. Before the year was ended, the Dunlendings were driven out, even from Isengard, and then Freyalaf became king. If they make it, they're like, yeah, that's going to be Hera, not Freyalaf. And he'll just come at the end.
They will do that. They will do that.
If they do, I will continue wearing this hat more often. But I don't like it when they change things. You know that.
All right, what do you think, Austin?
My biggest concern is that it's animated.
And what's concerning about that?
Well, have we seen any art?
A little bit of storyboarding, but
yeah, but that's not it. That's not final by any stretch of the imagination. I think
the
they showed some
original-
at this event this last week.
The original pitch was that it was like an anime.
Yeah, that's the. It is being done by I can't remember the director, but the anime guy.
I am not down for
Kenji Kamiyama. Kenji Kamiyama is known for. Here we go. This is how much I know anime. I know nothing about anime. I've never.
Neither do I. But I know that every kind of anime
he directed.
I've ever watched, I don't like.
An anime television. Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. He was background artist for Akira. Okay. I'm trying to find names.
Okay,
I know about.
I mean, those are two of the biggest anime of all time. So Ghost in the Shell.
Well,
and Akira.
yeah, I think the Ghost in the Shell. I think that was a TV movie of it, like a sequel type of thing.
Right.
Anyway. Or a book or a movie, a TV series. Yeah, but he's the director. This is his second. No, he's directed a few other ones.
So,
anyway,
so the question in my mind is, will it have the flavor that Tolkien gives the Rohirrim? And that seems like you might be a little difficult with some of the more prevalent anime styles. So of art from an artistic perspective, that's just my take.
Yeah, for me, I don't know, Austin. My thing about animated Tolkien is always like it's not important. That's the way I feel about it. It's like it's not real. It can be redone. It's sort of like it's like a Saturday morning cartoon to me. Like it goes in one ear and out the other, and I don't really care about it. And so for me, but that's just I know that's my reaction to animation as a whole. I'm just not a fan of animation. Particularly in something as robust as The Lord of the Rings and as timeless as The Lord of the Rings.
You don't like the backsheet panchless Aragorn?
Oh my!
Oh,
yeah. No, rotoscoping is like the worst part of animation too. It's like it's taking bad acting and bad animation and throwing it together. But yeah, I mean, everyone tells me like Michael Brandon from the Babylon Bee always told me like he was a huge fan of particular things of animation that he was like, you got to watch these, and I'm like, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I hope it's good. Maybe I'll appreciate it more. And if they do a really good job with it, at least it does have some pedigree in here of people who know how to write Tolkien. Certainly, Philippa Boyens was very good at. Like she wrote a lot of the conversational text that was new. She wrote it for The Lord of the Rings, right? So to make it sound like Tolkien, and so she has an understanding of how to do that.
Well, see. And that'll be the key there too, is if throughout the creative process, Philippa Boyens and everyone else involved has attempted to say, how can we give the most honor, credence, how can we bring to full flower the world of Tolkien, then I don't think it'll be bad. I mean, it might not be my ball of my bag as far as the style of animation goes or whatever, but at least from a storyline. But if they're like, and here's Tolkien's vehicle that we're going to inject everything that we like about the world today into this vehicle, it's just going to suck, just like Rings of Power.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic in the sense that if they want to root it heavily in Anglo-Saxon and in Mercian culture, that's intriguing to me.
Yes.
I would like to see more high quality visuals of that sort of a thing. But yeah, the anime sensibilities I do not think jibe well with Anglo-Saxon culture. It's like
yeah. Well, I agree.
We shall see. I mean,
no.
All right, so let's wait for it.
So they're doing that. So that's one movie. Of course, the other thing we heard about is this here. Let me get the. Let me get the right thing up. So this is Warner Brothers. They still have the licenses. They still can make films for The Lord of the Rings. And so let's see. Pam, did I get her name right?
Abdi.
Holy crap. This is huge. Pam Abdi and Michael DeLuca, who was very involved. I'm trying to remember exactly. He was an executive producer or something like that with the original films. Somebody in the chat tell me and go research it. And they literally went to New Zealand to meet with Peter Jackson to reestablish the relationships. And that was it, right? There was like a big thing about them saying like, oh, they're going to redo Lord of the Rings movies. And all we got was, let me find it in here. They went and had, let's go do this way. So they're right here. She and DeLuca also brokered a pact. I don't know what that means. Brokered a pact is like the non-committal way of saying like we spit into our hands and shook.
Brokered a pact is something witches do with the devil.
You're not wrong.
That's right. That's true. They brokered a pact with the Witch of the New Zealand, Peter Jackson, to make a new Lord of the Rings films and reestablish the studio's connection to the franchise's original director. I don't know what that's all we got, but they're exploiting Lord of the Rings just like
yeah, that's right. It's just they just are exploiting other things too, like Batman.
Yeah.
So
I don't know, like that's people like dove into this and said like they're going to redo Lord of the Rings, but like this is literally all we got. So I wouldn't read
so
into
I
it.
have tried to ignore this as much as possible because it disturbs me. But is it when they say they're going to redo Lord of the Rings? I've seen headlines that say they're going to make new movies, and I've seen headlines that say Lord of the Rings reboot.
I don't think they're doing a reboot.
Very different things.
I would highly doubt that. Like especially with all the actors still alive and Peter Jackson, like so if they want to get him involved and say, hey, can you remake the movies that put you on the map and like are considered the second greatest trilogy of all time, or greatest trilogy for some people? I understand that. They're not going to redo it. They're going to either do probably Third Age stuff again, or early Fourth Age. I'm guessing, but probably I would bet they're going to do something like a young Aragorn. Like there's too much there not to do.
Yeah,
and they could get a different actor
and frankly they may have learned, despite all of the incessant news articles trying to convince us that everyone liked Rings of Power. I think they've learned their lesson from like trying to go too far back and remake everything.
Yeah,
I think they're going to stick with things that they think are nostalgia bait enough to get people to go and see what they're cooking. Speaking of Rings of Power, though, wasn't there an article we were going to talk about that too?
Yeah,
I remember seeing a clip where Michael was defending Rings of Power.
Oh, that's right. I want to know. Did you you saw that, right? So Michael read this wonderful excerpt from Silmarillion and of the Rings of Power and the Third Age, and talking about how Sauron was seen as fair. Yeah, hold your head in shame. That's right, Michael. Sauron was seen as fair and. He wanted, he was seeking, like, perhaps he was actually, he was contrite. His contrition was real in some way.
At least at first.
And he,
out of fear.
Yep. He set sail on a boat with some random people towards Valinor near the edge. That was in there too, apparently. No, sorry, that wasn't in there.
It did say that he was supposed to go back to Valinor to make it, to basically admit his fault and receive judgment from the Valar, and that he couldn't do it. He wouldn't do it, never made the trip, but he was still in fair form. So all I was saying was there is a way that, that first 2% of the plot line, which is like Sauron is on a boat, good-looking Sauron is on a boat heading to the west, might have worked in some way. And you wouldn't believe the hate comments I got. Wow, it was amazing.
It was awesome. I don't know. See, here's the thing. Like, it wasn't to me that's what they did. Is that they did it so clumsily. Like what I said in our review was that there was a lot of, well, it could have, or they might have. And like, yes, they could have, and they might have, but they didn't, and they didn't show us anything about why he was there, about what his relationship with Galadriel might have been, about the relationship he had for the people on the boat, to know that give us an information about why he might have set sail from some shore far away, thousands of miles.
It's just the J.J. Abrams black box thing. Sauron was the black box. Like, who's Sauron? Where's Sauron? Of course he's still around. Could it be Halbro?
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that, Austin, about how like they introduced it?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea of Sauron looking like somebody that you wouldn't expect. That's well established in the lore.
Agreed.
I don't think Maya would have to ride a boat to get back to Valinor if he's.
So that was my point too, right? He could have like been, hey, Yanwei, I need to get back.
Like I think that, I mean, especially given the fact that at this point he has not lost enough power that he can just discard his body.
Yeah.
And go as a spirit, which he probably would have had to do anyway. I mean, that's what frustrates me about Rings of Power, is that there are so many incipient ideas that could have been great.
That's all right.
Speaking of Alfred, by the way.
Very nice. Is that your dog's name?
Yes, Alfred the Great.
Awesome.
like the idea that the orcs, how much humanity, how much free will, how much goodness do the orcs have? These are things that Tolkien hints at in his writing, right? Like orcs are required to be dealt with according to the laws of war. We see that certain orcs have a moral code. Like there's this whole huge metaphysical issue that Tolkien involves himself in as to can the orcs really truly be an evil race? Is that something that God would allow?
And so, he's very conflicted. He goes back and forth.
So that's a great opportunity for storytelling. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, it just again like
as long as it's great storytelling, that's the problem, not corporate boardroom storytelling.
We can kind of see him. He's fading in and out, Austin.
There's Alfred. Alfred's wearing the Ring of Power.
He's slowly fading in and out. Again, this goes back to my whole point of that. Like the Rings of Power is just written and executed so clumsily, and technically it's fine. It's good. Right, it should be for what they're spending on it.
It is a competent cultural object.
Sure, there you go. It's a competent object. Cultural, whose culture? I don't know. It's not
corporate,
mine.
Sorry.
Did you say cultural?
It's like a Marvel
corporate.
Film, right?
Yeah. It checks the boxes. It meets the needs. They had their, Fran with the clipboard going by and making sure they were having the right kinds of people and the right kinds of music and the right kinds of special effects. But this season they're like, it's going to be even bigger this year. We're really going to get into the depths of what their motivations are and the struggles that Galadriel has with being attractive to Halbrand and still being married to Celeborn. I guess, I don't know. That's where things start going off the rails. It just bothers me. Like the whole timeline is still completely screwed up. And so what do you do now with the rest of the rings? Or with, like, is he going to take on another different fair form and then somehow imbue the power of the other rings now?
That was my big issue. Like, how is this going to work?
Yeah, the last rings were created first.
The 3 good rings now, and it's very clear, or at least she believes it. I guess maybe Celebrimbor doesn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm also very eager to see what happens with the effects of the writer's strike. And
they were almost done. They finished filming while the writer's strike happened, but the showrunners were kicked off the set because they were apparently members of that union, so they weren't allowed on. Here's the quote from this article that I had up a second ago. Here, I'll show it again. It was this article, right? Oh no, it's not this article. It's this one right here. As shooting wraps in the UK on the show's second season, the last few weeks, without Payne or McKay on set due to the WGA strike, the Writers Guild Association, Alliance, whatever, the cast's hope is that all the fuss about budget and casting is behind them, and that the show can now be judged on its merits. Because we didn't do that earlier. We were clearly just judging it and that tries to tell an epic but relevant, relevant story about how power can corrupt and goodness can hopefully.
So I have a screen to share about what the audience thinks of a competent corporate product.
Can you do it?
I just did.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, got to add it to the stream. Boom. 38% versus 83%. Yeah, I mean...
So it turns out, like in that article that you were talking about, they try to say that the hate was coming from a vocal minority. I don't know. Was it really a vocal minority? Because it doesn't seem like it was a minority. It seems like
here's the thing. Yeah. The people who liked it felt like they had to like it because the people who hated it really hated it. I was just I disliked it tremendously because I think that's a problem when you feel like you're forced to watch something and then it's just kind of bad and you have to watch it anyway. But 2, it's so much easier to cast everybody into their own silos and say like, no, they're just influencing everybody and they hated it. And so then it snowballed into everybody else hating it. But the biggest damning part of the reviews of it is everybody I know that's watched it was kind of like, yeah, that's fine. And that nobody cares then.
I hated it.
Or I hated it.
Like a lot of people that I know hated it. And some people were like, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah,
but that was nobody loved it, and as opposed to, for example, the Jackson films, which have their problems compared to the books, but they're fine.
Yeah, I know I know people. I think it was my brother. Like he said, I finished it. He's like, yeah, I eventually finished it, but just because I felt like I had to. But it just sort of lost me in the middle. I didn't care about anything at all going on.
Well, that put him in the top 37% of people that actually finished it.
And he's the kind of guy who like he enjoys movies. Like I know one person who like enjoys almost every movie he sees, but he enjoys movies just because he enjoys spectacle too. Like just it's fun to experience.
Yeah, he likes to be entertained. Yep.
Yeah. And so his bar is lower than mine. I'm much more critical. I am in all things much more critical. But he was even with this here. He's like, nah, it was just I mean, when then we laugh about rocks look down, ships look up. Where there's love, it is truly never dark. All that sort of stuff. But anyway, yeah. So but here they're going to this season, guys. This is the season that they will be judged on their merits.
Right.
Because nobody does that. Anyway, I hate that.
I mean, literally at the same time, there was a prequel from Game of Thrones that everyone was saying wasn't going to do anything, and people loved it, and so it performed so much higher than expectation. So can't just be the casting.
Right, Elena in our chat did ask though. Speaking of casting. Who do you guys think was the best character, if there can even be one?
The one that quit.
the actual good actor who was playing the new character that
Adar. Yeah,
Adar. That's right, Adar. Adar was the best. Yeah. If I had to pick one, honestly, I feel like Disa was acted pretty well. Was interesting for the most part. I thought the worst character, if I had to pick, was not even Galadriel or Halbrand. I think it was Gil-galad. He was so like milk toast, mealy mouth, like bleh. Like he's not grand or great. He's just it felt like a community theater actor who wasn't in the role, or they didn't know how to do it.
Yeah, Elendil didn't do badly. I like during the third as well. The father, I think was it the third or the fourth? I can't remember.
Those scenes were the best to me. Was with the two Durins.
Agreed. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They felt the best.
And that was one thing that a lot of us railed against. Like, you can't have two Durins. That's not allowed.
Which is true, but it came off well. I mean, the
and this is where it speaks like that we were speaking about its merits, right? I was like, the music was great in the movie. I have a hard time listening to it in the series. I have a hard time listening to it because it brings back memories. But the music was fine. It was good. I really like Barry McCreary. But
they never succeeded to my mind in showing us any compelling culture. They had a bunch of chances with the culture of Linden, with the culture of Austin Nefiel, the Ringsmiths, with the culture of Moria, with the culture of course, Numenor, and they just failed over and over again. And the culture that we learned the most about and got most into was this dirty village in the middle of nowhere that doesn't matter. And it's just so I feel like it's with the landscape and the cultures that Tolkien wrote, you gotta nail some of them in order to get it right. To tell a good, compelling story of this age, and they didn't.
No.
That was what. Speaking of that, and this is something that I wanted to bring up the last live stream as well.
Mm-hmm.
The idea, the first and second ages are really the ages of the elves, right?
Right.
Men are in the ascendant, but this is not yet their world. And I thought, how interesting would it be to not compress the timeline in the way that they did? And to have all of the elvish actors be the same, but like every episode, or even within the episode, the humans the men are just like constantly disappearing.
Keep switching up. You know, Austin, they actually had a quote about that, and there was, and it was amidst the flurry of quotes prior to the launch of the show, and they actually addressed that, and they used it completely opposite to the reality. They said, well, we couldn't do that because then we would have to have actors coming in. And it's like, no, you wouldn't. You would have the elves still there, looking the same, and there's no problem. This is literally the only historical show where you have no problem with that because the elves look the same 100 years later, or 200 or 500 years later.
But so just visually representing that timelessness as they're just living.
It would have been amazing.
It would have been awesome, and they could have got like 5 seasons out of it too, instead of just trying to.
I mean, imagine if they wouldn't have spent 5 minutes crafting the 3 rings that they did, and they would have the season would have been like
circular object.
Yeah, coaxing it into there by dropping it lightly. I guess, because gravity is slower when you drop it lightly. But no, they could have shown, like, because Tolkien writes there were lesser rings created, and then like them practicing on the lesser rings, and these guys are growing older and they're dying, and some of them die.
Well, there's
while
lesser
they're
rings, and then there's the 16 rings that
right.
became the 9 rings of men and the 7 rings. The elves made those, and they had them. So you had those rings of power there before the final 3. And the fact that the 3 rings, even aesthetically, they were these uncut stones. Like, that's what the elves were known for. The Silmarils were so built because their ability to fashion gemstones was unparalleled.
Catch the light.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you got like dye-colored pieces of lumpen glass and just like dropped it. It's so bad. It's so bad. Even aesthetically.
Do you guys, let me ask you then. Do you guys think it's going to last the full 5 seasons?
No, not a chance. I don't think it'll make it to 4. Maybe they'll force a 3rd one, but I don't think they'll make it to 4.
I don't think it's going to drive any subscriptions. That's what I mean, look at what Disney had to do with Willow and with a couple of their other shows. Ms. Marvel, they just took them off. I don't know if they took Ms. Marvel off, but they just took them off the streaming service because they didn't want to even pay the writers and the people involved with it anymore any fees.
Right. It was costing them money.
It was costing them money to just keep it up because it wasn't driving anything at all.
Right. And that's the thing. To speak to what we were saying earlier, Jonathan, sorry to interrupt, but does it create love? Like, we can have a technical argument about all the things that it did well versus not well, blah, blah, blah. Ultimately, does it create love? Does it create attraction? Is it something beautiful to enough people? For all of my quibbles about Jackson's films, I like them very much, and they created a great love for Tolkien's world in so many minds of so many millions of people across the world. Do the Rings of Power create a love for Middle-earth? Because that's the only thing that's the only way you're going to be able to exploit it for all the money as a business person.
Okay.
So I don't think they do.
Well, this kind of brings up sort of a more philosophical question I was thinking about this week, kind of in regards about like the love that was born for Tolkien's works out of Peter Jackson's films and other things. So here's the thought. Let's see what you guys think. There is, like, for me in particular, I'll do it from my perspective, whereas very much I dislike it when people change Tolkien, because that was sort of my first great literary love, and so it holds I hold it very dear. And when I see it changed, it hurts a little bit, right? Because they're not doing it right, and because it's not the vision that I experienced. And so that when I saw Galadriel go all nuclear in Fellowship of the Ring, when I saw Aragorn be, he was hemming and hawing, and when I saw Merry and Pippin be just the slapstick comic relief, and Gimli too,
and fat weak need Faramir. How about him?
Yeah, that too. All those things, right? That bothered me tremendously, but it brought a ton of people into Tolkien, like Dan from here, and who's John Trent, and people in our pod, Middle Earth Mixer, like they and then
they were introduced.
And they dove deep into it, and so
can't see Rings of Power doing that.
So here's the thought, right? I believe there's truth and beauty, like in Tolkien, and I believe that it can be experienced in absolutes, and then people take Tolkien's work and they sub-create out of that, right? And it's lesser, in my opinion, than the original. I think we can all agree with that. That generally, if the original introduces itself to so many people, for the most part, it's going to reach a higher level of engagement, at least emotionally, mentally, logically, to me than anything else will. And so, do I hold some responsibility for denying people, like pointing out so many flaws in the Rings of Powers? Well, what if it does bring people to the Lord of the Rings? What if it does bring people to Tolkien more? Or does it push people away? Are we being so critical because my desire for it to be as close to Tolkien as possible is actually hurting the positive influence it could have?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote an article to this effect for Common Good magazine quite a while ago when Rings of Power came out, which is that I believe that the Tolkien community has the opportunity here to influence a large group of people positively. Like the reason why people are attracted to Middle Earth is because they see some sort of holiness, some sort of sacredness, some sort of meaning in it. And if you have I can use this analogy. If you have a seeker come to a church, and maybe they're not quite, maybe they don't understand what the Trinity means or what the incarnation is, but they're fascinated by the character of Jesus. How do you respond to that sort of a person, right? If somebody's watched like The Chosen or something, like a semi-problematic show, or Mel Gibson's movie or something like that. They've come in, they're like, I want to know more about this. What is the best, most effective way of responding to that sort of a person? Is it to shut them down and critique all of the things that got them in the room in the first place? Or is it to push them instead to say, well, actually, the truth is in this direction, right? I understand why you love that stuff. Let me show you more of that. So the line from the article that I wrote, it's basically like, let's assume that Rings of Power is Gollum, right? That it is this sort of twisted, greed-fueled product of a dark lord, right? But what does Tolkien say about how we're supposed to treat Gollum? Right, like that's the whole point, is that there is some goodness in there. Yeah, go back
pity.
Pity.
I have to evoke pity for Gollum.
Pity the Rings of Power.
Somehow.
Pity the Rings of Power. Yeah.
Well, but the pity of Bilbo ruled the fate of many. So there is something in there that is to be captured. That does not mean that you ignore the things that need to be corrected.
Right.
But you do it in a way that builds excitement and welcomes rather than shuts down people's curiosity.
Yep, and this was Tolkien had a much quoted phrase about this, where he talks about how he wanted his work he called it more or less connected legend, to be leave scope for other minds and hands wielding paint, music, and drama. And so he did, in fact, want his world to be built on. So the question is, how do we encourage people to build on it in the right way versus in a way that lessens the original?
Yeah, and where's that line? For instance, I get really frustrated when people try to rewrite Tolkien's belief system to fit their own because it makes them feel better about liking The Lord of the Rings. And so I call them out on it and says, look, you can't read. In fact, I did that recently. I pointed out your book, Austin, and I was like, look, you should probably read a book that like actually tried to understand Tolkien's theology and how he lived his belief and how he exemplified his belief through his books, rather than trying to say, hey, he knew these people and this was so clearly his belief system was based around his friends. I'm like, no, you can't, like, just because he had a friend, like just because he had a divorced friend doesn't mean he was okay with divorce as a Catholic, right?
Very clearly was not.
Right, exactly. And so
with Lewis over it,
you point that out, and I don't do it with vitriol. I don't do it with. I might do it with sarcasm and with a few pointed words, but I don't ever cast aspersions on a person's character or anything like that. But I feel like those sorts of things, people take it so poorly now. And granted, this is, if it's on Twitter, if it's in any social media, you're going to just get like piled on responses to that try to point out every flaw that you might have in the people you follow on Twitter or whatever. But yeah, so I don't know, where's that line between calling out the untruths for the truths that are clearly already there that might, harm their enjoyment of something like Lord of the Rings?
I mean, this reminds me of my undergraduate studies, where there's you're going through the classics, you're reading the great books, and there's a point at which people are try to voice their own interpretation on the text, and ultimately our mantra was always go back, like what Payne and J.D. Payne said actually over and over again, which was go back to text, back to text, back to the books. We would always say go back to the text. You have to be able to do a careful reading and respect the author's intent more than your own opinion about a subject in order to get a good read.
Yeah, I had a discussion with this with a fairly prominent Tolkien Society person on Twitter yesterday.
Wow.
So
here we go. What was it about?
Well, my question was, have you ever noticed that the people that want to problematize authorial intent only do it when the authorial intent interferes with their personal preferences? Like we got no problem figuring out what Tolkien means in all these other areas, but like in these particular areas, all of a sudden it's not so clear that he means X, Y, or Z. And the reason behind this was because there's a Tolkien Society conference coming up. There's a particular person that is co-hosting the conference, and I seem to have it on good evidence that they are at least have worked on a paper at some point that heavily critiques my book and the methodology behind my book, and says that we can't talk about Tolkien's authorial intent in such a cavalier way. And again, there's academic freedom. Like, I want to read this paper. I want them to make a case, present your evidence. That's what the Academy is for. I welcome debate. But again, the idea of authorial intent is not some sort of mysterious thing that shows up every once in a while. Like 90+% of the time, we have no problem understanding what people mean. It's only in these particular instances where for some reason it gets in the way of what we want them to mean. And so there's a very simple solution to this, in my opinion. The fan reception, what Tolkien would call applicability of a story, is a separate thing than interpretation. And I have no problem. I do not want to impinge upon the freedom of like a podcast like Queer Lodgings or something that wants to explore queer
100%
of
They're
Lord
allowed to do it.
Right. Yeah. The issue comes when you confuse fan reception with interpretation. That's a separate thing.
Yeah.
Do not try to make Tolkien a secret advocate for your cause. You need to be just say that you disagree with him on this, and that's fine. Like,
unless, of course, it turns out that you can support from his own writings and the text of his novels, you can support that he was an advocate for X or Y thing. And that's where it does require discussion and debate. But what I agree with you on is fan reception has to do with how a thing makes me feel and the images that it evokes in my head when I read X thing. And so that's fine. Talk about that all you want. But it is interesting. I mean, I don't know that you're going to get away from it though, Austin, because I think that it's a human thing to do. When we like something, we seek unity with the mind of the one that created the thing that we like. Yeah. I believe we were created to do that, to seek this kind of communal unity. And so we do it with our authors, we do it with our spouses, hopefully, we do it with a lot of work colleagues, we do it with our politicians. We always try to merge what I have in my head with what they were saying there or they wrote there, and I think it's a thorny issue to try to right the ship on that, because I think our culture is too far bent towards the worship of their own personal emotions. And so I don't think we don't have the skill set of real analysis, of sort of separating yourself, what we used to call objective analysis versus the subjective response.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. That was what the Tolkien Society person sort of pointed out, is that this happens for people that want to support an objective authorial intent too, is you use that to sort of hammer home the positions that you agree with. I didn't say this in the conversation, but I can say it now. I hope that I'm a good enough reader and a charitable enough reader to be able to not do that, right? Like, I'm not a Catholic, but one of the most gratifying things for me in people's response to the book has been that they see accurate Catholicism portrayed in the book, right? Like, there are a lot of things that I disagree with Tolkien about, but I am able, hopefully, to interpret him accurately and honestly about those issues. So I am not persuaded that the people who are looking for objective authorial intent are as easily taken in questions of truth or falsity as those people who don't really believe that authorial intent is the most important thing in reading a text. I would reckon that the proportion of people who believe in an actual truth or falsity to interpretation would be more comfortable disagreeing with an author that they enjoy than the people who take a Foucauldian approach or a post-structuralist approach.
Absolutely.
I don't have any evidence for that, but I would bet something.
And because I'm the only authority on what I'm about to say, because it's about me, I've often I talked about with my kids when I'm reading Lord of the Rings or afterwards when they're a little older, the things that I would love to sit down with a pint with Tolkien with and challenge him on some of the things that he said. He's the fiction author I respect the most of anyone that I've read in the last 200 years. But I would love to have a Chestertonian knockdown drag out with him over a few things, because I respect him so much, and because I want to engage with him as a person. I don't want to just foist my beliefs or use his writings as a cover for my beliefs.
Yeah. I don't know.
But you asked the question, Jonathan. What do you think?
I know. Well, so here's the thing. Like, and I don't speak from a position of like the history that you have, Michael, or the education that you have, Austin. But I go back to when I graduated from college, and 95% of everything, except for maybe the Shakespeare class, was all about reading yourself into the story. Of your feelings were far more important than anything that the author ever intended. And I've used this illustration many times, which is, we were talking about Robert Frost's poem Out Out one time, and it was about a kid who's using a chainsaw. The chainsaw bucks off almost like off the log because they're like living in the forest. Like, this is in the early 20th century. Almost cuts his arm off. He essentially bleeds to death, but the family has to go back to work and go back and cut more wood because they're going to freeze to death if they don't have the wood, right? And it's like the life goes on even through all this death, right? It was this thing that was brought up to be like, so what do you think this poem means? We were talking about it, right? This is before the internet. Before Wikipedia. This was 99 or 2000 probably. And I just brought up, I'm like, well, maybe he had a family who he knew where this happened to the kid, and this was his way of, like, his emotional way. Like, he would write poetry, so he had to deal with it in a way, and this was the way that he had to, like, confront it. And he's like, oh, well, that's actually what happened. Like, then why didn't we start there? And so we don't even start with what the author, like, where the author was when he wrote this, because we are more important than the author now, and that drives me bananas. I think back, like, on a cultural level in 2021, I was doing the podcast on the Babylon Bee with Dan and with Kyle there, and I was at Knott's Berry Farm. It was like the end of May. It's right before we moved to Tennessee, and Dan texted me this tweet from I think it was wondering.net about how there was all this stuff going on with, like, anti-gayness for when Gandalf became was cast as when Ian McKellen was cast as Gandalf, and I was like, that never happened. What are you talking about? Like, there's always, like, bad apples that come out, but there was not a huge undercurrent, which is what the person who runs the Wondering.net at this point still was saying. And I'm like, no. Look, you can go through our message boards. We had our archive of our message boards, over 3 million posts, and you will probably find no conversations about Ian McKellen's gayness, whatever. Homosexuality. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Anyway.
So it is derogatory to say that a person is a homosexual, but you can't talk about homosexuality. There's a difference.
Okay. Thank you. I will remember that. As much as I remember people's pronouns. So, yeah. So I tweeted out, and this is essentially what brought me back into to Tolkien again, like to being part of this community, because I was so annoyed that people were rewriting history, that nobody had a problem with Ian McKellen back in the day, but because it was the message that they wanted to send, that they would feel better about sending by saying it was a big problem for so many people, because it was at this point that, this was the Tolkien Society's crazy 2021 like papers that were out about
heteroamatonormativity.
There you go. Yeah, it's a word that's not meant to be a word. So the same people who make themselves the most important part of the story are the same people who are going to rewrite a little bit of history in order to make sure that it's telling the story that they want to tell as well. And
there's another great book. I'd recommend it to anybody that wants to understand this sort of thing. And I think it has a lot to do with our talk about corporately packaged pieces of art. It's kind of obscure, but I feel like maybe you guys, it's called 1984. You guys heard of this book?
Does it come after 1983?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a sequel or what, but this guy, George Orwell, and I don't know if he's ever written anything. I don't know.
I don't think so.
Anything else that was good.
Doesn't ring any
probably
bells.
some sort of like fairy tale about animals.
Like an animal story.
Yeah, probably.
That one's for kids, right?
Yeah.
Kid story, yeah.
Gosh, I just read it last month for the first time, honestly. Like, I read Brave New World a long time ago. But
Wait, what? You didn't have to read it when you were in high school?
No, I read Brave New World instead of 1984.
Okay, we had to do both.
Yeah, so I don't know, but like I read it for the first time.
Yeah, it's
And
eerie, isn't it?
It's so scary. Like, how did he know all
Like
of this?
it's crazy. It's like Chestertonian too, and the way like so much
Well,
these people had insight into.
it's Chesterton, it's Tolkien, it is Asimov with iRobot, and it is Huxley, it is Orwell. The people that have insights into reality, and they write them into their works of fiction, and they just have their minds just sift deeply through reality, and they have the gift of expressing that in a fictional way. We need these kinds of minds,
But nobody's reading it anymore.
Hmm.
I mean, people probably some people who watch this are going to think we're serious about like. So he wrote a fairy story about animals. He wrote a kid story about animals.
Called Animal Farm. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Man. Yeah. Well. All right. It's a fine line for me to be how critical. Like I won't go to the point of like ever casting aspersions on the people involved with it. I don't want to be negative towards the people, but I will point out the fallacies that I see in the execution of it all. And sometimes that's hard to hear. It's like, I think your acting kind of sucked, and you acted poorly in it. And I will say that when it needs to be said. And it's just like a book I read. Dan Brown's books are written very poorly. They're not they're not executed in a literary appropriate fashion that makes it anything that would stand the test of time. So I'll call it out, and but I'll try and remember to. There might be some people that come to Tolkien, and like you said, right? They come to The Chosen, or they come to even Last Temptation of Christ back in the 90s, whenever that was. Who knows? But to have a discussion around it, I think is better. That's why I'm excited. I'm hoping to have more discussions with people that I disagree with, because it's more fun to seek understanding of your differences rather than agreement in your sameness. That's just boring.
It's the worst sort of class. Like as a teacher, to have people I have now mandated any time I teach a class, I have mandated that if we come to a text, students have to come with one point of disagreement.
Awesome. That's good.
Either with another student or with the text itself, because it is so boring to just have everybody talk about how great it is all the time.
I know. Yeah. That's why
as if the text has its own social media account. You got to be careful so it doesn't commit suicide.
To bring it around, that's why I disagree with the whole thing about Legolas walking on snow.
So I would like anyone left listening to note the timestamp, because Jonathan keeps claiming that it's we that bring it up all the time. Turns out I have receipts.
All right. Fine. I do. No, it's a fun thing to bring up, because I didn't realize when I said that this one time at a podcast in like March 2021 that it would be haunting me the rest of my podcast life.
Well, that's often how it is with these things. In Riddles in the Dark, on the first page, one that I taught on Wednesday, he found a small, cool piece of metal. It was a turning point in his career, though he did not know it.
Yeah. That was. So you're saying that my
well done.
My problem with Legolas walking on snow is my own golden ring that I must somehow.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
Oh man. All right. Well, those are all those. Go ahead, Michael. What?
All the best things in life are metal.
Yeah. No. Just like the music.
Yeah.
Man, that's what I got this week, guys. I feel like there should have been more news that we brought up, but between all that, that's a good amount.
Nah, it's more fun to go philosophic. News is fine.
Yeah. So, well, here, I'll just remind everybody that, all we're trying to do is
sell hats. That's all here for. Push you to the hat.
That's right.
Gotta make Tolkien great again. And that means finding somebody with passion to run these shows, these games, this stuff that's coming out that is just lackluster, right? It's not like it's I was gonna say, like, it's not like it's horrible. I'm like, well, no, Gollum was pretty horrible.
Gollum is horrible. Yeah, it's objectively horrible. I do think that we do need a forest green version, because I feel like that would be Tolkien's.
You'll have the option.
You'll have forest green.
You'll have the option. I don't know if forest green is available in this hat, but there are other hats and other things that we've got that are forest green. So we'll throw those up there. But yeah, Michael, if you can get me the Tengwar script of this, that would be awesome.
Sure.
And I'll put that up too. So hey guys, good seeing you. Hopefully in 2 weeks we'll do it again, maybe with the same crowd or different crowd. And I know Austin will try and get you on as much as possible while you're not teaching. Yeah. But Yeah. And thank your wife.
Summers are a little easier for you?
Summers are easier, yes, but every year they get shorter.
Oh, fun.
Because of climate change?
No, because the school
because
demands
of Houston
earlier and earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, are you on semesters or quarters?
Both. Semesters are made up of quarters.
Okay.
I don't. You mean so? We're not. This is not an ISD. So
Okay.
It's not like whatever the weird new thing that they're trying to do. But
I don't know.
that's a whole different question. Trying to speaking about quantity versus quality, as we did at the beginning of the podcast. That's not the way to increase education.
No, agreed.
Just have
this is why I'm homeschooling, because I didn't want to get up at 6:30 in the morning for my middle school kid. And like, just they spend half their time going between classes and waiting for the teachers to get ready.
It's not very Prussian of you. We should just be more Prussian in our education model. Yeah.
All right, y'all. I got to put my ducks to bed.
Oh yeah, the ducks. All right. Well, when the ducks go to bed, we know it's time to sign off. So everybody, thanks for joining us. We will see you in a couple weeks again here on Fellowship Fridays. So thanks. See you, Michael. See you, Austin. Bye-bye.
Bye, freeloaders.
Oh yeah, go to theonewing.com/members. Do that. That's important.